Welcome back to Global with me, Matthew Muraliwala. Now, Sri Lanka's civil war is the backdrop to just about everything in that country. The raw figures tell one story: 25 years, 70,000 lives, but they provide only a tiny glimpse of the suffering which, for thousands of children especially, continues to blight their lives. Well, now a pianist from Edinburgh is trying to help some of those orphans through music workshops. Tanya Ekanayaka, who was born in Sri Lanka, is behind the project, and she's here with me in the studio, and we'll talk about that work in just a moment. But she's one of Sri Lanka's most famous musicians, so let's hear a little of her music from a concert here in London. Well, Tanya, welcome to the programme. No holding back there, but I mentioned your work with all of those children, many of them orphans. Start by just telling me how you actually decided and got involved in that sort of work.
Well, it was entirely an accident. What happened was I was in Sri Lanka. This was back in 2012. I'd been invited for an international music festival there. And I was interviewed by a local newspaper, and I simply spoke of my interest to work with children, maybe, to share whatever skills and knowledge I had. And someone who runs a non-governmental organization in the north, focused on war-affected children in the northern region, got in touch with me and asked me if I would be willing to go to the north and run a workshop. And that's how. And
we're seeing some of your pictures of exactly those workshops, and I mean, just look at their faces for a start. I mean, these are kids, and it's worth saying it, having made the point about their faces, these are kids who have gone through extraordinary traumas.
Yes, the first picture you saw actually was taken down in the south, because since then I extended my project to include impoverished children all around the country. But yes.
And how does it work? What are you actually doing with them? How does the music part of it actually help them?
Well, the intention is to try and provide them with certain skills that would enable them to collectively, in small groups, create or evolve their own original music as part of expressing their emotions, expressing themselves.
That's interesting, because you're also a linguist, so expressing your emotions either through language or music, it's similar, isn't it? Do they express some of the horrors that presumably they've been through? Can you hear that sometimes in the music that they play?
I'm not sure, really, because I think that is precisely the point of music. Music does tend to be quite abstract. So how they would choose to express their feelings, whatever those might be, it may not necessarily be their war experiences. It might be something else. Can, I think, differ. And they do tend to draw on their own indigenous instruments as part of the...
And just briefly, because I want to talk about, you've got a new album out,
yes,
and I want to talk about that in a moment or two, but can you see, you go back regularly, so can you see the progress that those children are making?
Well, the progress, I think, is seen in also the numbers of children attending the workshop. So I worked with around 50 to 100 the first time. The second time I worked with around 400. And just a few months ago, back in 2014, I worked with 800.
Wow, so the numbers are growing and growing.
Yes, in terms of the participation of the students, and they keep coming back. So hopefully it's had some...
Well, listen, I mentioned your album. It is there. It's been recently released. It's been very recently released in America. I just want to play for our viewers just a short burst before I actually ask you about the influences, because such an interesting mix of styles and music from the West and also Sri Lanka. But let's hear and have a listen. Now, just describe for me the particular type of music that you play, because I read an interesting thing. You talk about reinvention of Sri Lankan melodies, and I didn't really understand what that meant. But how do you do it then?
Well, this album includes entirely my own compositions. It's my debut. And each track includes what I would say perhaps adaptations of Sri Lankan melodies, ranging from very ancient chants to popular folk melodies. And those are combined with motifs inspired by the tonal centers, if I might use a technical term, the sort of keys of Western classical works that would also feature in the same program. I don't evolve the music consciously in the sense, oh, I think to myself, oh, I need to use these works in my music. I guess it has to do with my own background, because that music is part of who I am, just as much as Western classical music is.
Well, so it has been a long musical background as well, because I was listening to you talking about how music has been in the family since you were born. You said that you learned to sing before you could even talk. So thank you so much, Tanya, for coming in and giving us a little taster of that album, but also talking about the work that you do in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.